recently had the honor to sit down with writer, director, producer, activist, educator, and Academy Award winner for Best Original Song, Mr. Jamal Joseph, as he shares his journey and gives us words of wisdom and great encouragement.
Panther Baby is a memoir. It is the story of my life, and it is my journey to manhood via the Black Panther Party. I joined the Panther Party here in New York when I was 15 years old, and for me it was as much about family and seeking manhood as it was about being involved in a revolutionary political movement. I never knew my real father. I was raised by adoptive grandparents. So when Dr. King was killed, I sought out the Panther office. I came in angry, thinking that the Panthers hated white people and they were going to give me a gun. Instead, I learned that the organization was about love for the people, love for the community, and service. And instead of giving me a gun that very first day, I got a stack of books. Malcolm X, Frantz Fanon, Eldridge Cleaver, Chairman Mao, and I was told to study, so I understood what the revolution was all about. The very next day I came and I was doing community service, helping to give food away to the community. So I learned early on that being a Panther was really going to be about not hatred, but love for the community, and loving the community enough that you would defend the community and fight with your life to make revolutionary change. I was arrested at 16 as part of the Panther 21 case, stayed in prison for a year before I came out on bail, became the youngest leader of the New York State chapter and one of the youngest national spokespersons for the Black Panther Party, and wound up spending close to 9.5 years in prison as a result of my involvement in the Black Panther Party. Yes, I was an honor student and a member of the church choir and a member of leadership training programs before I joined the Panther Party. But there was a real call of history and, an idea that I had to fight for change in the community. So it was an amazing transition, and yet I wasn't alone. The ranks of the Black Panther Party was made up of students, of men coming back from Vietnam, of men coming out of prison, of men and women who were living in poverty, who were hustlers, who were street folks. You had people who questioned society, who were disenfranchised by society, and who knew that the answer, that it wasn't their fault personally, and that if it wasn't their fault personally, that if it was the fault of the system, what could they do to come together and fight collectively to make change? When I started serving my time, especially when I got to Leavenworth Prison, I met an older brother who was a prisoner who spoke some words that changed my life, really powerful words of wisdom. He said, "Young blood, you could serve this time or you could let this time serve you." And that went off like a light bulb. So I started reading books. I started enrolling in the school program and in the college program. And the University of Kansas had a great program that came in. You could go to school full-time in the evenings. Professors came in, they provided books. They gave their time, office hours. So I was able to earn degrees in psychology and sociology from the University of Kansas. I'd done a little bit of poetry and acting while I was in the Panthers as part of the Black Arts Movement, and I formed a theater company in prison. At first was just with the black prisoners, but then the Latino prisoners came to rehearsal. At first we thought they were coming to break up the rehearsal, maybe they had a beef with someone, but they wanted to participate. So black and Latinos got together, and some of the white prisoners came around. And we were the only multicultural group or section of the yard in prison. And I started to understand. I started writing plays and directing plays, doing poetry. And the response that happened, not with the men who participated, how they began to change. And then when we would do these plays and these shows, how we affected the energy of the prison population and created unity and conversation and dialogue, stopped the gang fighting and the gang wars, showed me the real power of the creative arts in social and for social change. And so when I came out, I knew what I wanted to do. Gil Scott-Heron had an amazing poem that he said, where the revolutionary would not be televised. But in prison, I came to believe that maybe part of it could be televised, maybe part of it would be on stage, maybe part of it would be on the airways via progressive music and spoken word. And so that's the work I began to do in the community, volunteering with youth groups, teaching theater, helping young people tell their stories. And that led me to a journey that where I started teaching at colleges locally and volunteering. And then 15 years ago, two amazing things happened for me. I became a member of the faculty of Columbia University of their graduate film school, and I also co-founded an organization at home called Impact Repertory Theater, where we did exactly that work with young people, use leadership training in the creative arts to empower young people to have a safe space, to imagine and to dream as big as they could, and to understand how they could use their talents and their creativity to promote social change. I think transformation in our community and revolutionary change happens within the individual first, and then they become part of bigger families and bigger movements. And I think we can achieve that on two levels. The first level is to get to our young people before they get caught up in the streets, before they get caught up in the criminal justice system, before they get caught up in drug abuse and in any kind of physical abuse. And I think we get them as young as possible, and you give them a safe space and positive role models, not just with the adults that are working with them, but young people who are just a year or two older than them, who've already made some positive choices about their life. So you show them young how to build community and how to live in safe space communities and progressive communities. But since we can't get to everyone, and since we live in a system where 1 out of 3 young men are destined somehow to become entangled in the criminal justice system, that somehow they will unfortunately wind up being arrested, wind up in prison, wind up on some kind of supervision, parole or probation, that this is an epidemic in the black community. 2 million people in American prisons, more than any other country in the world, and a great majority of them are young men of color. So they need a second chance, and they need people to believe in them when they're coming out of prison, to understand that their life means something, that they are important, that they have the ability to make a positive contribution, that they can change their lives, and really importantly, that they can help change the lives of others, that they can become role models, organizers, protectors, mentors, good sons, good husbands, good fathers, good older brothers that can help guide the younger generation around these obstacles and around these traps, and that they can help the elders in the community feel safe and feel protected. And our community needs to have that embrace, and our community needs those frontline warriors, those teachers, those mentors that are accepting these young men with open arms and saying, I've been where you've been, here's how we can do it differently. Here, in the spirit of Malcolm X and other people who have been through the system, that we can make our lives mean something and become heroes in our community. Yeah, the media totally misrepresents what black manhood is about and who black men are. It's so easy to turn on the TV and to see the black man as the absentee father, as the gangster, as the angry individual. And so it's really important for artists of conscience to portray in the media, through books, through music, through social media, through the internet, through film, through television, through plays, black men in a positive role, and those black men who are having problems, working it out in the spirit of love, in the spirit of meeting that challenge in a positive way, and showing how life could be different. It's so easy for our kids on the street corner on TV to see that the only thing that they can do to achieve manhood is to be part of a gang, is to deal drugs, is to do time as a rite of passage, is to be prepared to die young. What we need is more graduations and less funerals. What we need is more kids headed to Yale and less kids headed to jail. And we do that with positive images, and then we take those images with mentors in the community that are there for these young men to talk to touch, to hug, to get advice from, that are there guiding them in different directions. You know, in the Panther Party, one of the greatest compliments that you could get was that you had love for the community and that you were a servant of the people. And that you were guided, your actions were guided not by your ego or what you thought needed to be done, but what the community was telling you needed to be done. So as a man, as a Panther, as a warrior, if that meant that there were hungry kids, that meant that you got up in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and got to a community center or a church and helped serve breakfast to those kids. That meant that you helped the elderly in the community get to a clinic or get to a Panther free health clinic. That meant that after school that you helped tutor kids in the after school programs. So it was really understanding that your service and that your leadership was defined through service and that your strength was defined through love. And that's what true leadership is. You humble yourself and you become part of the need and the spirit of the community, and that defines your work and what you should be doing. You know, one of the things that happens is that we have less community centers, we have less of those grassroots organizations that are directly giving service and mentoring people in this way. And, you know, in some ways the Black church has lost ground in the community in terms of being that force that was an anchor of the civil rights movement, that force that produced leaders like Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy and people on the ground. But I'm encouraged by the fact that there are young leaders in the community in Harlem. I have to point to a young pastor named Mike Walren, who is the pastor of First Corinthian Baptist Church in Harlem on 116th Street and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, that serves food every Friday, that gives out free food in the spirit of what the Panthers does, that has a program that they do called Breakfast Before Books, that has a powerful prison ministry and an AIDS ministry, that the membership of the church is primarily young people 40 and younger. They just opened a community center that's open to all kids in the community. And so that kind of movement is real important, and real important that the churches, if they're not serving the communities that they're in, if the schools are not serving the communities they're in, if the community centers are not serving the community they're in, then it's up to the community to help make that relevant, to come out and say, why aren't you serving these needs? And not just us as a community to wait back for people to lead and people to serve, but for us to demand it. We started, the Panthers started the breakfast program with no money. We saw kids were hungry. We go to a church, we go to a community center. We'd ask, could we use the kitchen? Could we use the basement? We go to storekeepers and we'd get donations of eggs, of milk, of cereal. We'd get volunteers, and within a week we'd be feeding kids. We need to take leadership and take control of our own destiny by being proactive, challenging the institutions that exist to do better, and leading the way by doing better for ourselves. So Impact Repertory Theater, I hope, represents some of what I've learned over the years in my own experiences in the Panther Party and different community organizations as an educator. When a young person comes into Impact, they go through what we call Impact Boot Camp. And the boot camp teaches them the history of the organization, why it's important to work together as a group. They have to be a unified group. They get boot camp shirts because we don't want it to be about who's able to afford, you know, Fat Farm or Sean John, and who's not able to afford it. They're all dressed the same, and they understand that everything they're going to get as members of boot camp, they're going to earn through community service, through learning the history of Impact, through also improving how they're doing in school and how they're behaving at home, and that everybody in their particular boot camp is their brother and their sister. So you may have come through the door with your cousin or with a friend, but we're going to break those cliques down and create this thing called safe space. And it means that you're physically safe. It means that you're safe so there's no bullying, there's no cursing, there's no fighting. It means that you're safe to be who you are. And that when you're speaking up in a group, or when we're doing a singing workshop, even though you may not be the best singer, that you're going to be supported and people are going to applaud for you. Even though you may not be the best dancer, people are going to cheer from you, that you're getting support. The second principle of Impact, so safe space is number one, is called outstanding effort. And it means doing your best. In Impact, at home, at school, at your place of worship, giving your very best. And the third principle that people in boot camp have to learn is service. Service to your family, friends, and the community. Understanding that you must give back. You might be 11 years old. You might be 14 years old. We don't say, wait till you get to college, wait till you get your career. You can give back now. You can volunteer some time helping seniors. You can give away food. You can help with voters registration. You can give service right now, and it's important for us to understand that as a community. After that, they graduate from boot camp and they become full-fledged impact members. They perform in the community. They're part of the creative labs. They still are getting leadership training. They're learning things like conflict resolution. They're learning public speaking. They're learning how to create a resume. Every impact member, no matter how old they are, must tell you what college that they're going to. They have to claim it and research it. You can always change your mind about what school, but it's never too young to make up your mind that you're going to school and that you're going to have that career and that you're going to give back. And so they learn in this phase what happens when you combine activism and the creative arts, that you become an artivist. So in boot camp, they learn the principles SOS, and in impact, they learn what an artivist is. And then most of our members go to college, and then they come back and they become part of leadership of impact. They become part of the impact alum, which is known as Impact Vibe, and that's the part of the give back that's very important. You have to give back. This program doesn't have a lot of money in terms of grants and funding, but we've survived for 15 years because we built a grassroots organization where the members understand, not just the adults, how important it is to keep the organization alive through love, commitment, and service. The education system really fails young black men and women, in particular young black men, because they're not seeing images of manhood. They're not being reinforced with the skills that they need to be able to walk through those gang areas, those poverty areas, and understand how they can hold their heads up even when things look dismal, how they can dream even when life is a nightmare. So that requires mentoring. That requires people having smaller groups to help them with subjects that they don't have the head start in, that they may not have gotten at home, that support that they may not be getting after school in terms of technology, in terms of science, in terms of math, in terms of that esteem. And their creative self, not just their athletic self, but their creative self in terms of participating in writing classes and poetry and those kinds of things to help them develop the skills that they would need for those high school applications, for those college applications, to do those research papers. So they need mentoring and more attention, and they need culturally appropriate images and role models in their textbooks, in the school films, on those trips. So rather than just point the finger at the educational system, it's really important. This is the mission of New Heritage Theater, which is the parent organization of Impact Repertory Theater, to produce films and plays that reflect those images, to give the kids wider cultural experience so that they can come to places like the Dwyer and see an exhibit like Harlemist Theater, Harlemist Gospel, so that they can take field trips to other places. And so that as a theater, doing stage readings, productions, not-for-profit documentaries that are talking about the history of theater, the history of music, the history of the church. Langston uses a documentary that we made through the theater, that those images are available for our young people.